Welcome to the High Rise Podcast, presented by Headset, the leading data and analytics company for the cannabis industry.
Welcome back to the High Rise, a laid-back, data-backed conversation where we talk all things cannabis, from U.S. MSOs to Canadian LPs, products and market analysis through the lens of data. My name is Scott with Headset, and I am joined, as always, by Emily Paxia of Poseidon.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the High Rise.
All right, we're back again. 1 week later. That's it's not bad, right? Beats 5 months.
We're back, baby.
We're back. We're doing this. It's great. It's great and exciting, and always stuff to talk about. So at the High Rise, we always want to focus on data, and we want to focus on what's happening today in this cannabis industry. And I think we have both. But let's start with really what's happening today, because it's kind of big news.
Yeah,
and it has to do with the Farm Bill.
That's right. And last week, for those who missed it, you can go on highrise.fm to see the episode or listen to the episode. But we were talking about some of the trends of the Q3 earnings results for the top MSOs, as well as some of the product category data via Headset. And one of the things we were talking about was the potential impact of these intoxicating hemp products in the markets, and whether or not we're seeing that impacting the legal regulated market. So this morning, actually, apparently there was an update coming out of the Senate, where Senate Democrats introduced language to try to close what has been referred to as this loophole in the Farm Bill that has allowed for intoxicating hemp to basically be nationally available, unless the states have closed it off, like California or Missouri. And Ohio, we know, is trying to do this. New Jersey's limited it. Tennessee is putting forth language on this. And it's really interesting, because I've been hearing that this is coming up and in other places. The general consensus is that the language in the Farm Bill is a mistake. The Farm Bill was designed to allow for industrial hemp products to exist, and they were trying not to get hung up on what was called hot hemp at the time, where hot hemp, which I needed to.
I had not heard that before. Hot hemp.
Hot hemp. It's
why? Where does that come from?
Because it's like overheated on its THC, baby. I don't know.
That's a good reason, I guess.
That's my take on it. But what happened was that did not happen, and the language, it really, people have referred to it as a clerical error in the Farm Bill. Unfortunately, revisions to bills are anything but linear and quick. And as we all know, they've been kicking the can on the Farm Bill along with every other legislative act for the last 2 years plus. And so now we're looking to see what is going to happen in the revisionist language on this Farm Bill. Again, put forward by Senate Democrats in the Senate. We know that, if anybody watched Schoolhouse Rock, we know these things have to go to both houses, and then for the change to be implemented. But basically, what it sounds like it will do is it changes the definition of hemp to include total THC, removing Delta-9. And as we talked about, that's Delta-9 is, the active component that gives you kind of that intoxicating effect. Edibles and drinks would be okay, as they could stay under the 0.3% THC threshold, and I guess this is on by weight, and so that's kind of a big differentiator. THCA flower would be nixed from this. So this would, basically the language from Marijuana Moment, this new draft would also create specific definition for industrial hemp, coming back to what I was saying at the beginning, which includes fibers, stalks, grains, oils, seeds, and other components that will not be used in manufacturing or synthesis of natural or synthetic cannabinoid products. And so that's a very important distinction, because I'm a huge believer in the benefits of industrial hemp for the purposes of replacing plastics or using petroleum. It also could bring manufacturing back stateside, instead of allowing for we call it like dirty hemp that's grown in kind of dirty places in China. It could bring kind of this seed to sown movement back to the United States and support our auto manufacturers, other manufacturing facilities, and fabrics and textiles. So I think this is a nice, tidy way to do this. Because the other thing we've been saying is then if you're not going to do this, then you should have similar regulatory framework around the hemp industry for consumption, so that we're sure it's safe and not getting in the hands of kids. I would say there's an important thing to note here, which I do think our counterparts in the BevAlc space may be behind trying to clean some of this up, especially with the call out around beverage. I don't know, Sai, if you noticed when Governor Newsom signed the piece of legislation to close the market here in California. One of the first groups to step forward to laud his efforts on that was a alcohol distributor company. I thought that was interesting. I think, as a group that's been watching our category grow while theirs is declining, I think that they'd love to be able to take ownership through their distribution manufacturing channels, and this would allow just that to happen. That's pure speculation on my side, but it's, when you spend a lot of time studying up on both categories as analogs to one another, you start to see things show up. And we know that money moving in DC has to be big for things to actually move. So I would think we may have to have a counterpart on getting this cleaned up.
Interesting. So a lot there. So as far as you mentioned beverage and edible, so that would remain relatively unchanged per this kind of draft that's come forward, but it obviously wouldn't change like what happened in California with Newsom.
No, I mean, I think this then goes back to that each state will have their own regulatory framework, just like they do around other products and things like that. Like I think we talked about it once. Like I think we don't have Skittles anymore here because of the dye in the food, which is poisonous.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
I mean, like that could cut both ways. I mean,
That's right.
I'm not pounding Skittles, but I wouldn't mind one now and then. But it's just a different take on it. So good question.
Yeah. So this was proposed by Senate Democrats. What does that mean these days? Any ideas?
I think any listener would know my thoughts on the legislative process of the United States government. I think it's interesting that it was put forth. I think it will be interesting to see, how, it's put forth, right? And so now let's see how if it gets anywhere, and if it gets anywhere, how it ends up, like what the final product is, and in the revisionist language. So we'll see. I don't know.
For me, the big takeaway is that, like you said, that a lot of us thought that this was kind of there's a lot of perception around this being like an accident. What has happened based on the reading of the hemp bill and subsequent readings of people investing in this category, because it was like accidentally opened up. And this seems like a pretty straightforward acknowledgement of like this industry there is something here, and we're gonna write it into the bill now, because the previous bill didn't have any mention of drinks or
no
edibles,
good point.
right? Yeah.
No, I think they're going to probably handle it by THC by weight or by volume. And that's probably how it'll get handled. And then it'll be up to the form factor to fit whether or not it's legal. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So they're not going to add like categories to it. It's still kind of the by weight percentage. It's just that these changes still allow for that, which has been shown time and time again in multiple jurisdictions that this is federally legal, these types of products, right?
Yeah, I mean, they keep challenging it whenever a state puts up a ban on it. So, it's an interesting time in these United States. And
then that's for sure. That's a whole nother podcast. But this is total THC, removing Delta 9. So they explicitly called out Delta 9 in the previous one.
I don't think they did, and don't quote me on that. Because I'm trying.
I'm no expert either. I mean, it's
No.
just like a category, at Headset, we're not tracking this hemp category currently, so I'm not that close to it, but yeah,
I think the
interesting.
important thing is it's including total THC.
Total THC.
So I think that, trying to make it so that, people can't be like, oh, this is just one piece of the total sum of the parts, to pull it apart. So I don't know. This is a quick read. It's new news
New news.
today. And as you know, I was heads down because we had some meetings today, but when I got spun up on it pretty quickly, this is some of the steps I saw being taken around it.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting. Do you know, I mean, with this kind of this stuff getting drafted, does that mean that, I mean, the farm bill's coming now? Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, same thing. I mean, I honestly can't believe they kicked it this far and this long.
Yeah.
I know, it is kind of the point. I think we were talking about it last week about some people say, okay, well, if it's a red house or a blue house, if it's a red Congress or a blue Congress, then they don't do anything for a minute. But I don't know, this party ran on that they would do something. So, I mean, not like politicians always deliver on their promises or ever. But, I do think if they're trying to position themselves as the action party, then I hope they do something soon on this, just because the farm bill needs to be addressed. And then I do wonder if, again, like my take on it is not maybe that it's maybe that a red or a blue house wouldn't, or Congress wouldn't do anything, but maybe nothing was getting done because it was pretty divided. And everyone was just sticking in their corners on these issues. So nothing got done for the last 2 years. I don't know.
Yeah. And
I don't know. What do you think?
I don't, God, who knows? Yeah, I'm with you. It seems like it's been dragging out a long time. It seems like it's time to make something happen. We've been through an election cycle now, so maybe the dust is going to settle. Things can happen, but I don't know. Who knows anymore? But I mean, I know this farm bill encompasses more than just hemp, right? So there's certainly a big, broad reason to tackle it.
Right. Yes. I mean, and I don't know, Doge exists now. So there's like two ways to think about government efficiency. It's like, how many people does it take to screw in a light bulb up there? But also, what's the work product they're putting out? I mean, the guy who walked into Twitter with a kitchen sink, I can't imagine that if he looked at the legislative action coming out of our government for the last 2 years would give that a high efficiency score.
Right. Yeah, good point. We'll see if they deliver. Time will tell.
We'll see. That's the
yeah.
So we'll see. I don't know. And it's going to be an interesting experiment to witness, because I don't know. We'll see what happens next.
Yeah. At the very least, let's hope something happens. So it's kind of felt like at the federal level, whether it's rescheduling, farm bill, all this stuff, just completely deadlocked, right? So at the very least, let's see something. But yeah, this is the thing in the right direction. Makes sense. Yeah, I think it balances everything. In states like California, are choosing to regulate it the way they're choosing to regulate it, which is just like the regulated market, the way it should be. So,
yeah. And alcohol.
Yeah, and alcohol.
Each state has different laws on that, and within each state, each county. So,
that's right.
Yeah, I know I've met the business end of not being able to buy something before noon too many times.
That's pretty good. My experience was I think it was in Connecticut, and I'm from the West Coast, and yeah, I'm trying to buy. I was at like a Whole Foods and groceries, and I had like a 6-pack, and yeah, they were like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? What am I doing? You can't buy this." Yeah, that was pretty eye opening, right? Just with your groceries.
Yeah, or in Utah on Sunday, you can't buy any high alcohol product, wine, any like IPAs.
Wow.
So you really got to do, You got to take down some volume if you want to
Get
get
those
anywhere with
calories.
it. Yeah, it's not. I talk about efficiency. No, it won't work. Rule of thumb: stock up on Saturday.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it works as long as after 12 p.m. I guess.
That's what. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, okay. Well, we'll watch this. Today I learned about hot hemp. And I learned about dirty hemp. Those are two new hot and dirty hemp.
Oh my God. It has an OnlyFans page.
Watch out. This podcast is definitely 18 plus.
Not safe for work.
Okay, well we'll keep our eye on that. I think that news dropped today, and we're recording this live, so there's going to be a lot more to come. But yeah, it's something. It's something. Finally.
Yeah. And I know you wanted to talk about one of the states that's reviewing implementing regulations on hemp as well.
Yeah. So last week, we looked at October numbers and the different growth rates for different markets. And if you recall, I excluded Ohio from the chart on the growth because it's so out of band with growth, because Ohio recently legalized, maybe not all that recently legalized, but recently opened the markets. Recently, it started issuing the dual licenses for the medical and the adult use cannabis operators just in the last few months. And so I thought we could kind of talk through, what's going on in Ohio, what top line looks like, just a few data points that I thought were kind of interesting. So I have some visuals to share. And if you're listening to this later in your favorite podcast app, check the link below in the description. I will link to this presentation. Or if you want to see two really good looking podcast hosts, you can jump on to YouTube and watch it there. Or jump in live. But let me share my screen. Here we go. Speaking of hosts, there we are. Okay. So Ohio cannabis sales. What's going on? Well, October, $77 million in sales. So, extrapolating that out, it's about $1 billion market right now, which is pretty good. I don't have population. I don't want to try, but $1 billion, pretty good. I have a feeling Ohio's population probably could support a larger market than that, but this is brand new, right? And these are, early stage, first issued licenses that went to the medical holders, and year over year growth, the market's doubled. And we see different spikes depending on what the market is, but right now it's doubled.
Okay, I have a population update. It's the 7th most populated state in the U.S. and its capital is the most populated, which is Columbus. But we should not, shouldn't shrug off Cleveland, Cincinnati, Dayton, Akron, and Toledo. The population is it's around 11.8 million. And unfortunately for Ohio, it sounds like their population is set to decline, but I guess that's
declining.
A trend. Yeah. I guess that's
now with legal cannabis, it's going to go the other way.
Yes.
People are going to be pouring in to this dynamic market. But yeah, that's pretty good. So it should be more than $1 billion market, I feel like. But this is kind of the current run rate. So here we go, looking at the last 6 months, and it's pretty clear to see the double in sales. So just doubled sales. Ohio is near Michigan, which is a very big market, a very cost-effective market, so to speak, right? Average item price is very low in Michigan, and it is definitely not the case in Ohio just yet. And as far as like licenses getting issued and so on, I think there's still a lot of room yet on that. So this should continue to grow, I think, but still, a good jump. You can see that first month of adult use sales, summertime, big spike, kind of falls off into September, but kind of rebounding a little bit in October. October has one extra day, right? Versus sure September. Does. So, that impacts it a little bit, although that day is Halloween. And, I don't know how much that matters, but still an extra day. Sometimes that influences it. So pricing is getting competitive, but honestly, like pricing, I feel like for a market that has grown the way it has so quickly, I don't know, it's holding all right. This is the common thread, right? A new market comes online, and pricing. This is medical before, right, before August. So medical just historically has higher prices than adult use, and I think that a lot of that has to do with just a lack of competition in the market for most markets.
Mm-hmm.
And it is what it is there, and so usually you see this decline. It is about 12% off of the high back in August. It held in August, and I'm sure that's because it's new. Held the pricing.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's not as new, starting to get more competitive. Pricing comes down. It's natural, but like every market, this is pretty common. And unfortunately, it just continues to go for a long time on this downward slope. Obviously, impacted by a whole host of factors, including who are the operators, what's the consumer preference, what does the consumer look like, things like that. But generally, pricing will just continue to decline. So here's the heyday of where pricing was, and this is where it's going. And I thought, who are the operators? What are the names? What do they look like? And you may well recognize some of these when we talk about U.S. MSOs, including Rhythm, Green Thumb, or GTI brand. I see Ozone on here, which is an Ascend wellness brand. And I see Seed and Strain, which is a Columbia Care brand.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's pretty interesting to see. I know they've had, a footprint in Ohio for some time.
Yeah. And that, they have been out there. The stores for some of these operators are in awesome locations because of being a little bit closer to markets that do not have legal cannabis. So that's probably helpful on a vertical sell through basis. But it is cool to see that the number one here is Clutch Cannabis, because Clutch Cannabis is a pretty impressive large single state operator in Ohio. And I do love to see, some familiar brands showing up, but also local brands really having a resonance with their own population. So kudos to them for digging in there.
Yeah, agree. And this list, as you can see on the left side of rankings, it is not the top 6. It's kind of a mix of brands that I chose basically on who moved the most year over year.
Movers.
Yeah, as long as they're in the top 10.
That's
there may
still a
be
big
others.
number.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll read it for our listeners. So number 1, coming in, number 1, Clutch Cannabis, Ohio native, single store or single state, as Emily mentioned, 7.8 or 7.9 million in October sales, and they moved up 2 positions year over year. So they are obviously a big operator in the medical, continue to gain places all the way to number 1. Ranked number 2, we've got Rhythm from GTI, about 7.6 million in October sales, and they moved up 5 positions. So some big gains there, moving them into the 2nd position in October. Riviera Creek, also, I believe, local to Ohio, comes in at number 3, 5.4 million. They moved up 3 positions, moved up 3 into number 3. And then we've got Ozone, moved up 6 into number 6 at 2.8 or 2.9 million, let's say. And then below that, number 8, again, this is not like the top 6. This is just within the top 10, the biggest movers. Seed and Strain, 2.6 million. They've moved up 2 positions. And then rounding out the list, I had never heard of these guys, but I want to know these guys because I love the name. It's Neighbor Goods, like neighborhoods, but goods. At 2.1 million, ranked number 10. They've moved up 22 positions year over year. So I didn't really dig too much into Neighbor Goods. Could be a couple factors. They could just be crushing it. They might have just started a year ago and were just very small. Regardless, they've moved up quite a bit into the top 10 in a year. So
good for them.
Yeah, pretty cool list. And you can find a lot of these brands on our website, headset.io. Just search them. You'll see. You can learn a little bit more about them, so long as they're in the top lists generally in these markets.
I think this is one important call out is because I get to see this and you get to see this, and we have talked about it on prior high rise episodes. But these local single state operators that are like, I always talk about our industry like an iceberg where there's the public companies. That's the tip of the iceberg that people can see because they're public. But then below the waterline is a big industry of diverse and interesting operators who have really interesting businesses. And I think I hear some people saying, okay, well, the MSOs didn't post great quarters per se, not all of them. But you know what? Some of these companies probably did. And I think that's what gets me excited about our industry is nobody's won this game yet. And there's a lot of interesting and smart people who are trying to push this forward. So I love when we do these big dives and try to understand that there's a lot more in motion in cannabis than just what people can easily see in the public markets.
Well, it's such a good call out. And I know we spend a lot of time talking about top line market sales. Like last week, looking at markets like Arizona that have declined year over year, California declined year over year. And within those markets, we do see a lot of operators gaining position, driving more sales. So they're like completely outperforming the market, where the market may be down X percentage, they're up Y percentage, right? Within that market. So they're already, and this is from like a dollar perspective, not as like share of market, but just pure dollars. They're just making more money in these markets that are contracting as well. So you're right. The story hasn't been written and there's all sorts of cool stuff. When you look like one layer below, which is just so, it's hard to do because it's when people don't have the kind of information, handy and a lot of places will publish like, oh, state reported tax revenue numbers and it's down or whatever, right? And that's where the story ends for just an article, and that gets sent around and that becomes the sentiment. And then you just think, oh, everything's down, but it's not the case. A lot of stuff is up. This market is growing for sure. But these brands don't necessarily need to move up positions in a growing market. They could stay where they're at, but yet this group here in this top 10 have moved significantly. Each one of these that I called out, it's a lot, right? 6 out of the top 10 have moved within the top 10 have moved. Many have moved into it and some within it, right? But that's a lot of movement, even for a growing market. Okay. This I thought was interesting. So I wanted to talk about moratoriums and, every market, again, peeling back the layers, right, is different. Just because Ohio legalized doesn't mean, depending on where you're at, you can go into a store and buy something. You may be better off, driving into Michigan, depending on where you're at, right? So this graphic here, it was from the Moritz College of Law, Ohio State University. And so they're reporting that as of October 2024, 112 jurisdictions have moratoriums, making up just over 5% of Ohio's municipalities and townships. So jurisdictions, so towns, municipalities that have bans, 112 of them. This map kind of shows you where they're at. And I thought, okay, well, I'm no expert on geography in Ohio, believe it or not. So I thought it'd be good to kind of see what that looks like from a population perspective. So I have another slide here. Again, this information is available to you if you're listening. But you can see on this slide, it'll show population per square mile. So the red color here is where people are living, right? So you can see these dots. So up on the top right kind of corner is Akron.
Oh,
what is it?
Top right? Well,
Cleveland.
Cleveland's right on the coast of of Lake Erie there.
Cleveland. Yes. Yeah. So Cleveland, obviously big population center. In the center there is Columbus, right? Columbus, Ohio, which you mentioned is the most populous capital.
Yes.
Or the most populous
city in Ohio. Yeah.
City in Ohio. Okay. So that's where everybody's at mostly. And then you got on the southwest side, you've got Cincinnati.
Correct.
Okay, I'm kind of guessing. So just and I think right above Cincinnati, you've got Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So this is where the magic happens. I merged the slides together as best I could. Yeah. Look at that.
Data
It should
man.
have animated, but I can only do so much here. Okay, so this this shows you kind of where the bans are, the
Mm-hmm.
moratoriums are,
Mm-hmm.
where the population is, and I don't know. What do you notice anything?
Uh,
The green dots are the
yes, the
moratoriums. The red
moratoriums.
is where people live.
It feels like it's in the suburbs just outside of the dense city centers.
That's right.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think a
Is
couple
this
things I
NIMBY?
noticed. What's that?
Is this NIMBY coming at you
Yeah,
in my
I think so.
backyard?
I think, well, like one, you look at Columbus, it's like no real moratoriums. I mean, on the outskirts of
On the
Columbus, there's a
outskirts,
few,
yeah.
yeah, there's a few green, but compared to in between Columbus and Cleveland, look at that
Mhm.
stretch of moratoriums, right? That I think
Correct.
is kind of the rural areas, right?
Mhm.
Maybe just not dense population city centers. It's obviously not in the big ones. It's not Dayton, it's
Mm-mm.
not Cleveland, it's not Cincinnati, it's not Columbus. But that's where all the moratoriums are
Mhm.
mostly, like as far as volume. And then as far as overlapping with like population centers, I feel like Dayton, it seems to be a little more overlapped
Mhm.
with than compared to others, even though Cleveland seems to have a fair amount, where Cincinnati or Columbus, I feel like is pretty well no moratoriums, more or less.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting. This is a really interesting exercise. I mean, for example, like I know sometimes like for here San Francisco, Marin County has very few dispensaries that have been allowed. It's an interesting kind of like affluent urban suburban neighborhood. It's on that, on the edge of it.
Sure.
And I do feel like we've seen this a little bit over the years in different markets. Just kind of that like the uninformed perspective that it's going to like bring the kids to the drugs and vice versa. But that's just an interesting. That's more anecdotal of my observation where I see the moratoriums. But this also reminds me. I know you did this, and we did it with Hirsch too. The weed deserts in
Yeah.
California, and those do tend to show up in the more rural areas of the state. So I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I've driven through a lot of Ohio in my time because Buffalo's on the edge of Ohio, or we're neighbors essentially, and
Mm.
you can get to Cleveland in about 3.5, 4 hours driving. But by the way, go Bills. But anyway, yeah, this is an interesting overlay. And then how long did it say about the moratoriums, like the nature of these?
Yeah, there's
How
some
they
that are
changed?
like permanent, some that are
Mhm.
temporary. And the
Mhm.
temporary ones, it's like kind of wait and see, like what's going to happen
Mhm.
with this industry before they jump in. So it doesn't mean that they are permanent if you see a
Mm-mm.
moratorium. Now, for like context, right? Context is always helpful. This
Very.
sounds like a lot. 112 jurisdictions, 5% of their municipalities and townships.
Mhm.
Well, Michigan, which is a number 2 to California in like total sales of cannabis,
Mhm.
73% of municipalities have opted out of
Yes.
allowing adult use marijuana sales. So 73%, that's 1,300 out of 1,700 and 73 municipalities. So that's huge. 3/4 of the state. And following that, you've got New York, 50% of municipalities, 753 out of 1520. So 50%. So yeah, it's it's not as bad, right, as these other
Mm-mm.
markets. And it all goes back to access and size of the market. And so this is good for Ohio. Um, Obviously, it'd be great if there were no moratoriums. Even when a jurisdiction allows cannabis sales, there's nuance to that. Like,
Yes.
where do they allow them to be? It doesn't necessarily mean it's on Main Street, right? Very rarely is it on Main Street. Um, it's generally, somewhere far away, right?
That's right.
So it's not a perfect measurement. Even then, it's like you just got to keep digging layer after layer after layer to like uncover this stuff. But yeah, so on paper, great. Reality, like who knows? I haven't gone to Columbus to see where these are at, and maybe they're well positioned, maybe they're not. But at least the jurisdictions. There's just not as many, with only 5% having some sort of moratorium.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that they talked about is this host community fund. 36% of recreational cannabis excise tax revenue goes to communities that host dispensaries. So if you have a moratorium, you're not going to get this revenue. So it's an incentive to, bring it in, right? You gotta pay to play. If you want the money, you got to participate in this. So that could hopefully bring some people in. There's obviously, in the study that they did, they talked about employment. They cited 45,000 full-time cannabis industry jobs. Again, this is in the Moritz College of Law at Ohio State University. So they're making the case that, jobs could maybe help with the moratoriums. So
yeah. And just also the adjacent job creation and business stimulation that happens when a store is opened. Because, then coffee shops tend to do better because they're serving the employees. People are going to dispensaries. It's one of those things that has a halo effect around the community in a positive way. Verano has done a lot of work on that to help lawmakers understand the benefit of legalizing cannabis. But just another thing I would add to that is I appreciate the host community requirement. We did that in California. I know there's a lot of critics of Proposition 64, but the idea there was to try to get the communities to want to do it because they would see the benefit from the taxes. But if you snooze, you lose. So here it is again.
That's right. And then last but not least on the data here, they also reported on the moratorium by population size. And so most of the moratorium jurisdictions are very small population. 53 out of the 112 are sub 10,000 people populations. So yeah, quite small. So almost half, right? Half of the jurisdictions that impose some sort of moratorium are tiny towns.
Mm-hmm.
6 are 50,000 people or more. So yeah, really a small percentage. So this is great. I would love to see this kind of research for every market and, what it looks like. And, if Michigan 73%, what is the coverage from a population size? This is population of the areas that these moratoriums are in, but it would be nice to also see just like total population, right? In those buckets, there's 53 that are in the 0 to 10,000. Are they all 1,000 people towns? Villages? I don't know what's smaller than a village, like some little hamlet, or are they,
a hamlet.
like that's right, hamlets in Ohio. Or are they like, large cities? When it's 50,000 or more, are we talking, really big cities? Are we talking like 50,001, which is still relatively small cities.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting stuff. And yeah, just fun to talk about Ohio a little bit. We'll publish this out again in the show notes. So you can take a look at this and tons of Ohio data on the website if you want to just kind of click around, dig a little deeper on this stuff.
Yeah. And I'm excited for this market. The operators kind of lobbied to be able to open more stores, and there was a lottery process on that. So there will be more stores opening. Hopefully the limitations on form factors are going to open up. And
right.
Yeah.
I did not include category sales on here.
Yeah.
Good call. Because you mentioned that last week, right? No pre-roll.
Yeah, no pre-rolls, which is a bummer. But I think that but that's something, we hope to see changing and becoming available, because that is a big category for people.
Huge category.
Yeah.
I have the data. I just didn't include it.
Oh.
I can only do so much again.
Yeah, it was a busy day.
But yeah, that too. I don't know. We've talked about this in previous podcasts, but you remember Ohio has the per day limit.
Yes.
Package sizes.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like they sell like the number one units, the amount of units for flower is 2.83 grams.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, I think that's a whole day unit or a half day unit. I can't recall.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you remember the whole day
Oh, of
unit?
course. I remember the HDU. Or
Yeah,
wait,
yeah, and
WDU,
W, yeah, that's right.
not
So there's
hole.
still
As in a hole in my head. No.
donut holes.
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah, so they're selling it like that. Yeah. It's crazy to me, right? And the other thing that I noticed when I was digging up some of this data, and I don't know, we could go on, but I don't. We got to wrap this up eventually here. So, what was it? It was Vapor Pen, I think. Average item prices. Vapor pens are cheaper than flour, just on AIP in general. Average item price, which is interesting. Usually it's the other way around, but that's because generally you have like single gram flour that's driving the average item price down. I
Yeah.
think that might be the nuance. So I looked up average item price by equivalized price, which is a per gram price. So when you have 2.83 grams is their kind of baseline that comes out to average equivalized price of $9.44 per gram.
Program.
But you can't buy like single grams, right?
No.
So I think that keeps the pricing higher. But I was surprised to see the average item price for flour is just higher than average item price for Vapor Pen.
I wonder too, well, it'll be interesting because sometimes in the, when the market's open and they're trying to, and they've been, stocking inventory, you got to move it quickly. Sometimes you blast it through just a distillate process so you can get it into like vape and get it out there.
Right.
There's a lot of interesting, what's it called? Like kind of factors in the early days of these markets, but
totally. And then when I was looking at, let me see if I can grab it real quick here, just like Clutch. So gonna go to Headset, Ohio.
Clutch has cool branding too.
They do.
It's fun.
They definitely do. I go to Flower and Clutch. Number one product in the flower category is a Clutch cannabis product. So top unit sales, Orange 43, 2.83 grams, average price of $42.47. So pretty pricey, pretty pricey. But that's the number one selling by units. So people are here for it.
People are here for it. Come get the good stuff.
That's right. So there's so much more I'm sure we can dig into, but we will publish this out. We up for another high rise next week?
Let's do it. Thanksgiving
Let's
edition.
Do it. Yeah, Thanksgiving edition. That's right. Maybe we can figure out a theme there. And then the week after is MJ Biz, I believe.
Yeah, that one might be tricky.
Yeah, it might be tricky. But I'll be there.
I'll be there for a 23-hour stint. But we have a I'm speaking on Tuesday, on the 3rd. If anyone wants to come see me. Are you speaking?
No.
Running around.
Well, sort of. So there's like
speaking with people. Is that?
yeah. I guess that's what it is. It's more like a panel. It's related to the fact book. So MJ Biz publishes a fact book every year. They leverage Headset data. So I'm joining a group of people that participate in the fact book, different angles. So we brought in the retail sales. So there's some event. If you're a subscriber to the fact book, you can come to my somewhat speaking engagement. So that's my long answer.
No, I love that. The fact book was way back in 2012, 13. Yeah, I started. That was how I studied up. It was our first pitch book, had a lot of fact book data in it. So,
and now it's really even better because it has Headset data. It didn't have Headset data back then.
No, it was all self-report kind of, and just updates on reform and policy changes. So very and kind of market estimates, like how big could the United States be market be, et cetera, et cetera. So
that'd be interesting to look at some of those. Maybe we should do a podcast on that, like dust them off 10 years later. Where are we at? Yeah.
I have some of them and they are hardcover books. And so, yes, they have dust on them, I'm sure, in a cabinet somewhere. But yeah, I kept them because of that. I thought it would be a fun look back someday when I have time. But On the heels of that week too, I'll have the coming out of the big First Circuit hearing for the Supreme Court case for
Ooh,
the
wow.
industry. So pretty exciting things there. Did you see we've been saying government overreach for about a year now on this case, and now all of a sudden this whole theme of government overreach is like reigning supreme, and Justice Gorsuch just talked about it as it pertains to that sad little squirrel that they killed for what is it, Peanut? I hated that story. It was so sad.
Oh, yeah,
It was
I didn't. I saw the headline, but
I couldn't even read it. I was so upset. But I don't know. This guy had a domesticated squirrel and a raccoon, and the officials came and euthanized them. And anyway, let the people have cannabis. Let's do so that's on December 5th. So yeah, lots of exciting things coming up, Si. So next week we'll do a gratitude episode, maybe.
Oh, I like that. Gratitude episode. And then we'll figure out the week of MJ Biz. Given your like 24-hour stint, probably aren't going to be able to do something there, but I don't know. I don't get out there till Tuesday. I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll let everybody know what's going on, but we're trying to do this I don't know, back on our regular weekly cadence. So more to come.
Yeah. And we'll have Green Wednesday.
Oh yeah, right.
How could we forget?
How can we forget?
One of the highest holidays.
That's right. Plenty of data coming. Well, thanks for joining, everybody. We'll see you on the next Highlights.
Thanks for listening to the High Rise Podcast, presented by Headset. For more information on Headset, visit headset.io.